Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail. I know you're shocked 2 days in a row with a video, but I had some things on my mind today, had enough time that I could pull this out. Apologies to the East Coasters. Maybe you'll save this for the morning. Maybe you're watching this on your evening. Who knows, as you go to bed. But seeing a lot going on out there, and in some cases want to draw some connections. In others, just kind of talk about the news a little bit, and what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, and what some other people around me are thinking. So let's just kind of dive right in, what's going on, and just kind of tongue in cheek here saying, hey, win golden ticket. I think we're all waiting for some good things. So first off, we saw an interesting move in after hours, kind of had a little spike above 7, little dip. I'm recording this live as the market is still open. So if this screen is not entirely accurate anymore, then some things probably happened after I screenshot this. This was when it was at 694. I don't want to say too much about what that price is and where I have some thoughts on different price levels out there. I know Shorty likes to listen to that and perhaps manipulate markets around us. So I'm not going to say a whole lot about that, but interesting to see a move after hours. And I want to just share some goings on and then kind of have that in the back of our mind as we share that. So what have been some things we've seen the last few days? So first of all, a little bit separate from us. This I don't mean to tie directly to AMC, but I want to show you some things. And just oddly enough, I saw some news today that actually I had a little bit of personal insight on from some business experience of mine. I've told you guys a bit about my journey. Won't repeat that today. Perhaps for just some of the newer subscribers on my channel, I have a business background, have a couple of degrees in business, and worked at a large company for a long time. So I got the good fortune of traveling the world, and I've actually been to Singapore, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, and spent some time in Asia on business. So you see that we saw some news today. JP Morgan and Apollo executives reveal plan for a tokenized enterprise. I don't actually know how to pronounce this word. It looks French to me. Money. Someone can help me. But I did look it up. Hadn't seen that phrase, but I knew about this work. It's basically to do with kind of an active blockchain. So there's a lot going on there. Interesting. You can kind of look up, but here's something I want to draw your attention to. So you see this Project Guardian. I didn't highlight, but you can see here. So take a look at that sometime. You'll see some more information. I went and dug a little bit on that today. I want to just call your attention to these words, umbrella and Singapore. So I mentioned I had some business background. I had some time in Singapore. I just had the good fortune of working with, let's say, people who understand a few areas. So one would be treasury, and I mean corporate treasury here, not government, tax, and foreign trade, like foreign currency exposures. So I learned a lot of really interesting things. That's not my background. I'm not an expert on those things, but I worked directly with people for about 4 years who did that for a Dow Jones level company. So we're talking about actually billions of dollars of foreign exchange risk, hundreds of $1 million of taxes. A lot of interesting high-level finances I was exposed to, which is why I know a thing or two about finance as well, besides some other things, but I'm not here to share my resume today. So if you don't know, Singapore is you could almost call it the home of finance for the globe. Not quite. Of course, you've got finance in London and in New York and even LA and various other parts of the world, Shanghai, which I've also been to. But Singapore in particular, first of all, it's very friendly in terms of tax treaties. Now, treaties really matter. So as we've had kind of the corporatization of the world, as corporations have almost started to act like their own entities, sovereign entities, sometimes over and above, country level entities. So as the world is kind of seeing corporations become bigger and bigger, what they do is they operate business, whether in just name, like hanging up a shingle, so to speak. I'm looking at you, Dell, from quite a few years ago. If you guys recall hearing some things about Dell basically setting up shop in Singapore, but not having a whole lot there, and effectively saying that they were going to pay their taxes in Singapore. There's kind of a way to set up your business where effectively you are housing profits, let's call it. You basically create a profit center in Singapore And because so you get into all this stuff in tax, I won't bore you guys with it, but it's called transfer pricing. And you kind of get into being able to defend, am I creating profits at certain locations around the world? You'll find Ireland is another one, the Netherlands is another one. These are really tax friendly locations. And so, what you have in particular with Singapore is they're friendly with a lot of countries. So, they're not on bad terms with very many countries. So they have great treaties. And then what companies can do is they kind of house a certain amount of um, business there, like operations, processes, people, transactions. Have that there in Singapore and make deals with Singapore. Singapore will even offer, like, I'm talking like 10-year tax holidays on the profits you have located there, stuff like that. Some pretty big deals. And because they have these tax treaties, government to government, so say the U.S. says, hey, I don't really like what you're doing, U.S. corporation. We want to bring some more of your money back here and tax it. Well, they can't, because they can't go against this treaty that you've got with Singapore. Same thing for countries all around the world. So that was just a quick little lesson on some tax treaties and kind of global politics and money. And you'll start to hear about like expatriation and repatriation of funds. So when you start to hear about like there's cash sitting in other countries, that, by the way, is a large part of our kind of our economic impacts. Sometime research how many billions of dollars of U.S. companies are just sitting out in other countries around the world. And so that's why sometimes uh, presidential administrations will kind of have a repatriation, like a tax holiday to bring cash home, some things like that. But the point is, notice that this is tokenized assets, and notice who's working on this. J.P. Morgan and Apollo building up. I think this is something we're going to just keep our eye on in not even just coming days or months, I'd say coming years. We're going to want to watch this where you're seeing this all over the globe. I'm not the only one providing this DD. I've seen plenty of DD from other apes and non-apes. There's a lot going on in the world of crypto, a lot going on in terms of tokenizing various assets. One time in 2021, I think I'd even researched how you could tokenize real estate. Like you're just going to see tokenization up the wazoo. But I think the Singapore connection for me was very interesting. And I'm kind of like, what do JP Morgan and Apollo? So I'm watching that one. Just saw that today. There's not a lot more I can give you on that unless you want to hear a lesson in foreign exchange and global tax from me. And I'm not going to do that today. All right. But just keep in mind tokenization, global economics, Singapore, lots going on there. Okay. Now, let's continue to talk a little bit about crypto. So we've seen a lot of recent developments, and I want to kind of actually share a little bit of a contrarian view or kind of swim against the stream a tiny bit. You're seeing lots of posts all over Twitter in particular, at least that's where I see it, with, oh man, government overreach. I can't believe what they did to Binance. The government's just taking control of everything. Look, I'm not going to get political here. I believe in the unity of the ape movement, and so I've never revealed where I stand on politics for the most part. I'm not going to do that today either. So chances are, if you think I'm speaking in some kind of agreement with you, you might be wrong. If you think I'm speaking in disagreement with you, you might be wrong. What I'm just talking about very narrowly, very specifically here is some developments in crypto lately. And so I'm just kind of saying, hey, first off, what if Satoshi had actually built a currency with a conscience? And what I'm getting at here is there's been a lot of attempts at manipulating crypto, and perhaps there were fail-safes built into crypto to help avoid that. So let's just watch for that. I'll try to expand on that maybe in coming days, months, maybe years. Hopefully we get to have years of a journey together. And no, I'm not talking about waiting years for AMC to move, but a lot of us apes are getting to know each other and perhaps building relationships to keep teaching each other and I don't know, maybe be world changers. But sorry, I'm digressing. So yeah, what if Satoshi built a currency with a conscience? And some of what we've been seeing the last few months has been some folks getting caught in traps that were laid for them, fail safes. The second point, so coming back to this government, action and regulation, guys. I'm going to just say this plainly. It's okay for regulators to stop things like funding human trafficking or enabling stock price manipulation. Really, it is. So obviously I'm saying that a little bit facetiously, but it's just been blowing my mind the amount of people that are failing to see what Binance was really doing, what FTX was doing, all the crypto bros who don't know anything about our manipulation journey, how the tokens were created the day before the buy button was removed. the relationship with ape, the yeah, seriously, the funding of slavery and sex trafficking and terrorism and all these things. It's not only okay, I think it's right and proper that some of that was shut down. And so, sucks to be Binance and sucks to be Sam. And maybe they, got what they deserved. I'm just going to leave that one at that. So more on crypto. Watch for the spot. So about the spot ETFs that have been coming out. I'm going to relate this all back a little bit to AMC as we go. These things actually do relate to AMC in my opinion, especially around obviously the stock manipulation, hiding of FTDs, enabling naked shorting, creating tokens that aren't backed by equities, these kinds of things. Watch the spot. So you've been tracking Grayscale, BlackRock. Suddenly my brain is slipping on who else, but you've got the crypto spot ETFs coming. A little bit better than the futures ETFs as I start to learn a little more here. I think those, there's a perception were used to manipulate crypto a little more. Spot ETFs being a little bit better. And I think potentially tied to both to Ape and to our ability to run. I think there's some things going on. The pieces are getting set. That's my hope. I don't mean to spread hopium. I'm telling you that's hope. That's not a literal prediction. I shared like the earnings forecast yesterday. That's a prediction. That's DD. That's something I can confidently stand behind. This is just so far a hypothesis on some things that I've been learning. And I continue to say, wait for the full story on Ape. I will continue to try to, in my own mind, clarify it so that I can explain it in simple terms. That's the reason I haven't done it yet. But I've got a lot of notes and a lot of DD on what I think really happened with Ape, the relationship to FTX, how it blew up crypto, how it blew up Sam's plans. Yes, I think Ape is related to all of that. And I've shown you that on the timeline as well. You can go back to some of my crypto videos. Okay, here's more I just want to ask you to really think about. I like to see the context in the world and not just take sort of headlines that are thrown at me. A lot of apes understand that we're manipulated by the news media. Well, guess what? There's a lot of manipulators all over social media as well. And sometimes you think someone is an ape who's really just out there to manipulate you. That's been my point of view. It's something I've learned these 3 years. I've learned to be a little more, I don't know what the word is, but a little more thoughtful in how I digest information. And just because someone says they're an ape doesn't mean they either A, know what they're talking about, or B, are being, real with us. So I just want to show you a few things, around crypto that's been going on. So you probably know most of these things. And just I want to paint the idea that the SEC is a kitchen with a lot of cooks. Some of those cooks are politicians. Some of those cooks are people who perhaps are embedded in the SEC but have other agendas. Some of those are other regulators. So like here, if you remember, now that you know the whole story on FTX, at the time, a lot of us were pretty upset that there were kind of a gang of 8. So I'll just highlight here. So you see this on the left, and then you see actually over here in the middle. So there was a gang of 8 basically and it was 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans. So this is a bipartisan issue who were attempting to stop the SEC from even investigating FTX. And now you know what a criminal operation was being run there. There were these Congress people were attempting to stop the SEC from investigating from investigating the FTX, and specifically saying, hey, you don't even have the authority to do this. So they were shielding FTX, and we all know by now like how many politicians were taking money from FTX, and then frankly, I believe also protecting kind of a money laundering and basically a money printing scheme. So first off, you got to kind of have in your head the SEC answers to Congress. Do you trust Congress? Because so far, I think we've all seen there's a lot of issues with Congress. So right off the bat, you go, all right, the SEC answers to Congress. Then, sorry if you like Hester. I don't think very many apes do, so I'm probably safe here. But, I just did a little screenshot from her statement on short sale disclosure. So if you're unaware, I think most of you are probably aware, but Hester is generally... and I'm putting this very, very nicely and sort of glossing it over or whitewashing it. She's generally been against transparency. Well, she is one of the SEC's commissioners. She is against transparency in markets. That's a tough stance. and a lot of us really believe she's representing hedge funds. And just, go look at her background and where she comes from. But, then you get, this was actually just from the last few days, as the SEC kind of reaches sort of disclosure rules and getting those closer to reality. Looking at the bottom right here, some lawmakers are stepping up efforts to basically stop regulation designed to standardize breach reporting and increase transparency. Right, so it's just a theme over and over. Politicians are not really working for us. They're fighting transparency, they're fighting uncovering crime, and they're fighting disclosure of cybersecurity breaches. Us even knowing about things that happen. So with that in mind, understanding all that the SEC is dealing with, and I'm quite sure that there are some good people in the SEC who are trying to fight for us, this is what they're up against. They're up against their own teammates, they're up against politicians, they're up against hedge funds, they're up against lobbyists. There's a lot going on, right? So I am by no means an SEC apologist. I think if you go through my Twitter receipts, you'll see years of being very vocal and very loud about the SEC needing to do their job. But I do want to acknowledge the context that they're working in. So if you were a good person inside that body, you'd be fighting a whole lot of people, some supposedly on your own team. So that's interesting. Now, if you think about what went down with Binance, and you can go see my videos on that and all that went down, or you can just go watch the press conference itself. So I'm just suggesting, I'm wondering if there's a new sheriff in town and that might be good. Might be. I don't know. These are not circles that I swim in. These are not people that I know much about. But just kind of two different takes. So I mentioned I was going to be a little contrarian here. Here's another take from someone who's kind of well known. And you can see effectively he's kind of scoffing and saying, oh, I can't believe the CFTC is kind of going to be in charge of crypto and going after people. Really should have been the SEC. Well, if you go watch that press conference, you will see the Treasury was there, the Department of Justice was there, the CFTC, there's another body I'm suddenly forgetting. There were all these regulating and even justice law groups, criminal justice groups. Who you didn't see was the SEC. They were not on the platform. And I think sometimes, in DC and New York and other places, optics is a big deal, the way things look. And it's rarely unintentional. It's rarely by accident. So I have a feeling what was happening there is we were being shown there is sort of a new approach. And if you cross the lines, there are going to be some people coming after you, and you're not just going to be able to stop them, with lobbyists and Congress people. That's my hope. That's a pretty optimistic view, and I don't think we have a lot of reason to be optimistic about kind of our, captured regulatory bodies right now. But what I did see is Sam's going to jail, CZ's going to jail. These things have happened the last few months, and perhaps there's a new sheriff in town. But there's something else you really need to know, and if you didn't see the other videos, or even if you did, let me highlight this again. This gentleman who's over the CFTC specifically and more than once referenced tokens. Remember all that I've told you about tokens, and if you don't know, go back and watch any videos where I reference tokens or crypto. Swaps. We've talked a lot about swaps, and I'm going to hit that in a minute in this video. We're going to talk more about swaps and some things going on right now that are real big. And he talked about derivatives, right? Tokens, swaps, and derivatives. You've heard those terms many times in our 3-year journey, and they were called out in a national press conference live. I believe these groups have seen what's going on. I really do. I'm not suggesting yet that just means everything's amazing for us, but I don't know. The people that I believed were cheating against us, some of them have started to go to jail. I think that's a big deal, and I'm noticing it. And I'm drawing the connection for you to see that it was absolutely connected to us. Speaking of swaps, I'm sure you've seen this if you're on Twitter. I don't know. I'm sure this is probably making the rounds on Reddit. I don't spend much time there these days, or perhaps on YouTube. But if you haven't seen it, UBS, who took over from Credit Suisse, who took over from Archegos. By the way, Archegos, if you ever followed that court, he admitted in court to price manipulation, spoofing, stock manipulation, these kinds of things. So another, area where apes have been right. So speaking of swaps though, UBS, look at this. From March of 2021, you remember some things going on with AMC and I'll say GameStop back then. GameStop, sorry. Look at the expiration date, December 15th. Look at the size of this swap. Good grief. Just $1 trillion, no big thing. Something's coming. Something's coming. I don't know enough about this to say a whole lot more. Let's let this one wash out. I'll be tracking it. I'll do some DD and figure out some more. Often we publish this stuff as apes and then we find out there was more than meets the eye and maybe there's things here. If you know about this stuff, perhaps I'm reading this price one column wrong. So I'm just going to leave room for me to learn on that. But there is a very large swap sitting in UBS. I should have included, you won't see here in this video, that UBS has been kind of talking about, emergency private equity, people helping them out. The Swiss government has talked about bailouts and bail-ins and all this stuff. There are rumblings for UBS, and they may have just, taken on some rotten fish that they've got more than they know what to do with. We'll find out. I mean, it's pretty soon here, December 15th. Just interesting to see December 15th, because what else is going on? Well, we saw today there's a meme stock ETF shutting down. You probably saw that. Now, I'm screenshotting here a Yahoo article on the left that was not very friendly to us, but you see liquidate assets and distribute the liquidation proceeds to shareholders of record on or about December 14th. Now, remember also, Jim Chanos backed out of his fund and is going to be giving assets back, cash back, to investors now to the end of the year. Here's a meme ETF shutting down, on or about December 14th. We've got the swap at December 15th. And then, oh, by the way, that ETF, you can see an account here from Twitter that shared 95% of the AMC shares had been lent out from the ETF. Well, that means those are going to have to be recovered, recalled, sold, and then the assets returned. That's going to get real interesting, especially since, you can see the title of this slide, a re-hypothesis on ETFs. So if you don't know, ETFs are absolutely used to short stocks. There are academic articles you can go find on this. I've read some research on it in the past. Clear back in 2021, I read research about this. There's other apes who I've seen do a good job of explaining this recently. And that effectively, ETFs can not only be used to short stocks, but they can even be used to rehypothecate, which is sort of shorting and reshorting and reshorting and reshorting the same stock over and over and over. Just kind of passing the same bottle of wine around a circle and acting like it becomes 12 bottles of wine, so to speak. It's like that. So real interesting to me as an ETF shuts down. It doesn't have a ton of AMC shares, but depending on how many times those were rehypothecated, that could become an issue for some folks. So that'll be interesting to watch. Could be bullish. I don't know. I don't like to spread a lot of hopium on this channel, so thoughtful about that. But at least it's real that 95% of the shares were loaned out. This ETF is closing down, and ETFs are absolutely used to short AMC. These shares weren't lent out for someone to just play around with them. This was shorting. Okay, so where are we? FTX and Binance, they were basically cheat codes. I've talked about that a lot on my channel. So you go to jail. ETF, hey, no more rehypothecation for you. The swaps, I don't know. Are they going to go boom? I'm not quite sure what's happening there, but I am absolutely watching that. And apes are just sitting here saying, I like golden tickets. You know what else is December 15th? Wonka comes out. I'm pretty excited about that. It's been getting amazing reviews. I feel extremely bullish about AMC. Let's go.